Hey everybody, this is Nick Atkinson, the Safety Director. This is going to be your defensive driving training online. Defensive driving is not meant to insult your intelligence. It's there to remind everyone some of the habits we may have forgotten, or it could be new concepts. But anyone who drives a company vehicle, whether it be for Miller, Lesher, or DeKalb, needs to go through defensive driving training. So what we're going to cover today is just some statistics. We're going to recognize some hazards, and we're going to learn how to avoid those hazards. We'll also talk about what I call the human factors, or what we as people can do to be better and safer drivers. There is a section that's primarily for the runners, the warehouse drivers, the people driving the large trucks that require a C-Class license, and there is a quiz throughout this, so make sure you grab a pen and paper and write down the answers. There's only like 5 questions, but it behooves you to write them down. So we're going to get started. First off, some driving statistics, and this is just for Illinois over the past 2 years. 2015 fatalities, and that's deaths. That's not just incidents, not just accidents, but that's actual deaths. We're at 998. Of those, we'll run up to 1,000. About 12% involved large trucks, so the kind of the Class C license and above trucks. And about 16.5% were light truck and van occupants. So we fall into these categories. We drive these light trucks and work vans for work, or we have the box trucks and the state trucks. We're part of this statistic. In 2016, we saw a rise in fatalities. Roughly about almost 100 more deaths in 2016 than 2015. Now, they attribute that to lower gas prices, actually, that more people were driving, and therefore more people are driving, more people got into an accident and unfortunately got killed. We saw the numbers bumped up from 12% to about 18 to 20% of large trucks, and about 18 to 20% of light trucks and vans. So we saw increases in both of those. So quiz question 1, true or false. In 2016, we saw a decline in driving fatalities. So make sure when you email me later after the video is done, question 1 is either going to be true or false. So those are just some statistics over the last 2 years. I'm interested to see what 2017 brings. Unfortunately, we're on track to have just as high, if not higher, fatalities. So we're going to go over some hazards. We're going to recognize some hazards of driving, and we're going to go over natural hazards, so maybe things we can't control. That includes weather and all sorts of weather, and then some road conditions. Again, we can't control those, but we can avoid them. We're also going to cover man-made hazards, things that maybe we create or we can control, and we'll go on from there. So first off, we want to avoid these hazards, and we're going to start with the natural hazards we covered. So driving in the wind. We live near Chicago, the windy city. We have wind here, high gusts, sometimes tornadoes. But we know that there are gusts. We can anticipate them, especially when you're driving in prone areas, such as over bridges or long stretches of flat road. Larger vehicles act as a sail almost. We know those big semi-trailers catch that wind. It could cause them to kind of shift, if not go into our lane. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to that, especially on windy days. And you're going to see a theme throughout these slides of ways to avoid these hazards. And most of them, if not all of them, have a key to success is slow down. Slow down and keep your hands on the wheel and pay attention to driving. That's how we're going to avoid a lot of these hazards if we actually focus. Driving has become so easy now that the actual driving portion is the last thing on our mind behind the wheel. We have so many things else to do that we don't focus on driving, and that's where you get a lot of these fatalities from. Driving in the rain. Again, take your time. These things are going to slow us down. We need to plan ahead. Slowing down is the only way to keep from hydroplaning. Hydroplaning happens at about 45 plus miles an hour in water that's only 1/10 of an inch deep. causes the hydroplane. Hydroplaning, as you remember, is when our tire is actually not making contact with the road. Turn your headlights on. Make it easier for yourself to be seen. When your lights are on, I believe it's a state law that if your wipers are on, your headlights need to be on. And then give people more space. It's going to take them more time to stop, especially if their tires are slick, if they don't have as good as traction. Increase your following distance and give yourself time to react to maybe someone who's losing control. Driving in snow and ice. Every winter it snows, and it almost seems like jokingly everyone kind of forgets how to do this. It takes us a snow or two to remember, oh yeah, that's how to drive in snow. When you're driving in slippery conditions such as snow as ice, all of our actions and moves have to be deliberate. They have to be thought out and planned, and we need to exercise them slowly and cautiously. So accelerating and decelerating have to be done slowly, applying the gas slowly, because anything that we do fast and reactionary is going to transfer a lot of energy that we don't want to. It's going to cause us to spin or skid or slide. Again, slow down. I'll say this probably every slide, is driving slower is going to help us avoid those hazards and avoid those accidents. So give yourself some extra time. Again, increase your following distance. This is going to give you time to react to someone else's accident. It's going to give you some grace if you find yourself in a skid or a slide. And then know your brakes. If you have anti-lock brake system or ABS, and you just slow down quickly, press hard on the pedal, and then it's going to kind of vibrate and kick back at you, but that's the ABS working for you. There's no need to take your foot off the gas or stomp harder. It is working, I promise. If you don't have ABS, which I don't know of too many vehicles out there on the road anymore that doesn't have it, but you do want to let go of the brakes if they start to lock on you. Just some other tips for driving in snow and ice. Don't stop if you can't avoid it. We want to use all the things we can to our advantage, and that's inertia and force and gravity and friction. It's actually more hazardous to try to stop and start. I'm not saying to blow stop signs and red lights, but if you can help it, try not to have to stop. If you're going uphill, driving and applying a lot of gas to get up the hill is not going to work how we think it's going to, and we're just going to sit there and spin. So try to get a little speed going before a hill and let the inertia and the friction do the work for you. And then again, don't stop. If you're just keep going. And we want to use again inertia. And if you can't drive in snow, you don't have to go out. Stay home. That's the best I can tell you to do is just stay home. If you do not feel comfortable driving in the snow, I am sure that we would understand at work. If you find yourself in a skid, which skids can happen for a lot of reasons, whether it's over braking, oversteering, or over accelerating or driving too fast, there are ways to get ourselves out of a skid, but we have to do it quickly and decisively, otherwise we're going to find ourselves somewhere we don't want to be. These can happen for a lot of reasons, and the best way to avoid not just skids but any trouble on the road is to drive smoothly, plan ahead, and watch carefully and slow down, especially if you're unfamiliar with the road or where you're at and we're not paying attention in driving when we really should be. If you do find yourself in a skid, take your feet off both pedals. That's both the accelerator and the brake pedal, and turn the wheel in the direction you want to go. As your vehicle turns, correct slightly until you get where you need to go. But stomping on the pedal, stomping on the brake, or stomping on the gas is not going to give you the effect you want. Driving at night is used in the same natural hazards. It may not be weather related, but it's kind of a natural hazard. And we don't drive too often at night for work, but we find ourselves driving early in the morning, so still kind of the low light, no light conditions. So here's some helpful tips for driving in those conditions, whether it be at night or early morning. Make sure your eyes are healthy enough to drive this. Get an eye exam, make sure you're current with those. And keep your car clean. That's for a couple of reasons. The more stuff we have on our dashboard is going to limit our view. We're already limiting our view already with the low light. Why block ourselves even more? And also, for the second reason, having a lot of stuff on our dashboard or in our car is going to act as projectiles if we ever do get into an accident. So that's why I want to keep our car clean. Dim your light. That's going to help you combat glare. Medication can affect your night vision, and so can smoking. Smoking does affect your night vision from the studies that I've seen. Again, increase your following distance and slow down, and we're going to talk about fatigue driving later on in the presentation. So for quiz question 2, remember as you're writing these down, true or false, smoking affects your night vision? Next, we're going to talk about the other natural hazards, the road conditions. So some things we can't necessarily control. Watch out for holes, dips, cracks, and buckles. If our car hits something we don't want it to, it's going to cause us to jar, shift, stop, or do something quickly and violently we weren't anticipating. Foreign objects or debris in the road can come up and damage your car, can block your view. As you try to miss those debris, you could swerve into the other lane of traffic or into a side rail. And snow, ice, and those conditions actually kind of worsen the bad roads. They do cause even more cracks and buckles and holes. So that's kind of the man-made or the natural hazards. We're going to talk about now the man-made hazards. The hazards maybe we create are the ones that we can control. So other drivers. We've all been behind the wheel and try to ask ourselves, what is that other person doing? And the truth is we don't know. We don't know what the other person's thinking. We don't know what they're going to do or their next move. The best we can do is try to stay alert to changes and anticipate multiple scenarios. Give ourselves plenty of room to follow in case they do something maybe we weren't expecting. And we won't want to force them to make a bad decision. So if we're tailgating or driving aggressively and force them into making a poor decision, a lot more people are going to suffer from that. Vehicle maintenance. Your vehicle itself could be a hazard if it's in poor condition or ill repair. If it breaks down on the side of the road, you're introducing more hazards now. So now you're blocking someone's view. You could be taking up lane space and causing others to swerve or have to merge lanes. We want to make sure we're prepared for that, though, because they are mechanical and they could fail. So keep emergency kits in your vehicle. They should include first aid kits, fire extinguishers. Some of us have tools to repair quickly minor issues. Our large truck should have flares or orange triangles to signal the sides of the road. And I suggest a car charger. There's nothing worse than being stuck on the side of the road and not being able to tell someone where you are or what's going on in case someone is hurt in an emergency situation. Pedestrians, similar to other drivers, again, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know what they're thinking if they're worried about traffic. They could dart out into the road, especially children near schools playing on the playground. If they kick a ball into the street, are they going to stop? And we don't know. We hope they do, but we're going to slow down just in case. School zones and crosswalks and places where there's a lot of heavy traffic on school campuses. Both of us as drivers and pedestrians have a duty to exercise due care. Whether in a crosswalk or not, fault could be placed on both parties if we're not exercising our due care. So make sure we're slowing down at places where there are going to be people. So quiz question 3, true or false? If a person is crossing the street but is not in a designated crosswalk, you are legally obligated to hit them. City driving versus rural driving, both of those have different hazards associated with them. And we do both of them, both city and rural. And just some of the things in the city is we know that cities get really busy. And it doesn't seem to matter when, but they are the busiest, anywhere from 2 to 6 p.m. I know in my case, driving in the city is stressful because I get lost. And there's lots of one-way streets and lots of really tight intersections and crossings that I have to pay attention to. Make sure you give yourself time to plan ahead, to maybe plan your route. if you find yourself driving the wrong way, which could easily happen in Chicago, calmly and quickly look for the nearest place to pull over and turn around. Freaking out is not going to help you at all. And then on the flip side, driving in rural or kind of country roads, a lot of these are unmarked. They have hidden drives and entrances, which makes it driving 55 miles an hour, trying to find the road you want. We make quick decisions, and that could translate to an accident. A lot of times they're not as well kept. There's potholes and cracks. Especially right now with harvest season, there's farm limits on the road, and that's going to cause us to pass them or drive a little more how we wouldn't normally. Backs up traffic. We're driving at higher speeds in the rural roads than we are in the country. In the city, we're driving at 55 plus. We're talking about animals. Animals can be both city and rural, or both, or one or the other. But just as humans, they dart out it quickly in the road. It almost seems like animals have a little more fear for their own lives than humans do. I think humans expect us to stop, whereas animals do not. But again, it forces us to react. We don't want to hit an animal, so we might swerve into another lane. Hitting larger animals such as deer can cause a lot of damage to cars. I've seen cars hit deer, and the deer get up and walk away, and your car's totaled. A lot of animals are nocturnal, so not only do you have the low light, no light conditions of driving at night or in the morning, but now you have animals into the mix. So now I'm going to go over what we call the human factors, or how you, the driver, can safely operate a motor vehicle. Rules are written in blood. We say that. And that means these signs are there for a reason. That means enough people died or got hurt in speeds in excess of 55 miles an hour before someone said, hey, maybe we should create a limit. So follow all those signs. They are there for a reason. Using your turn signal does so many things. It lets the people behind you, gives them time to react. It helps in all those situations. Remaining alert and checking your mirrors. These are things we were taught in driver's ed, but maybe as we get older, we tend to let those slip. Making decisions and commit we'll talk about in the next slide. And I want to talk specifically about construction zones. We are in the construction trades. We could be those guys on the side of the road. So when you see orange, make sure we're slow down. Give those guys a break, because it could be us. And we know how it is when cars are coming at us at 55 miles an hour. So the OODA loop is actually something I stole from my concealed carry classes. This is something I teach my students. It stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And this is actually came up from an Air Force colonel named John Boyd. And if you ever want to, there's a pretty thick book about this in itself. And if you're ever into psychology, it's pretty good. I recommend it. But the OODA loop is actually our decision-making process. This is the process we go through automatically thousands of times a day when we're making decisions. Observe. We're watching something happen. We're watching our situation, our orientation process is we start to process that information. We process what we see, and we make a decision, and then we commit to it or we act on it. And the reason I bring this up is the OODA loop is actually like a muscle. If we work on it, it can get faster, stronger, and more deliberate. I don't suggest practicing this while driving, but if you sit down and you physically think through the process of your decision making, you'll find yourself getting better and faster at it. In my classes, I tell my students that those decisions we make come at 2,500 feet per second. And driving is the same way, except these decisions are coming at 55 miles an hour, or about 80 feet per second. So some behaviors to avoid. What is aggressive driving? Hard braking, hard starting, or chirping your tires. Hard cornering or speeding, changing lanes. All these are considered aggressive driving, and what we really need to avoid for not just accidents, but causing other people stress and maybe causing them to make bad decisions. So avoiding road rage, and this is for the other person. So if someone else is showing signs of road rage, or you can see them in the rearview mirror punching their steering wheel and yelling, move over, let them go, let them be someone else's problem. If you did something to make them mad, use the I'm sorry gesture, which we all know what that is, I would hope. Again, plan ahead and slow down. This is going to give you time to react and give you time to de-stress. Listening to music, actually there's been studies that show that music really does affect our moods and especially the way we drive. But listening to music we enjoy is going to hopefully calm us down and de-stress our lives. Use your horn sparingly. In fact, don't use your horn at all. Using your horn really doesn't help anybody unless you need someone to move if they're falling asleep at a stoplight. If you are the angry driver, if you are the one experiencing road rage, first of all, make sure you're getting plenty of rest and planning ahead. Don't give yourself any reason to be grumpy or tired. Don't use your car to blow off steam. I know a lot of people who, when they get angry or upset, they say they're going to go for a drive and calm down. I really do not recommend that. In fact, I think that's a terrible idea. You're already upset. You're already mad. Now you're driving a missile. And if someone does something to make you even more mad, it's just going to escalate the situation, and now you're driving a weapon. So please don't do that. I think that's a terrible idea. Again, turn down your music. Studies have shown that loud music leads to aggressive driving. Listening to thrash metal, you're going to find yourself driving a little faster than you really think you are. Again, music also has other hazards associated with you not paying attention, you're messing with the volume or skipping on Pandora. Remember, it's not about you. And these are ways to calm down, not just driving, but in general. As I was putting this presentation together, I saw what was called using restaurant etiquette. And what that means is most people are not going to lose their cool or act aggressively in a public setting such as a restaurant. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to have to they're going to kick out of the restaurant. And driving, we should use the same etiquette. Just because we're behind a clear windshield doesn't mean people can't see us punching our steering wheel and yelling and flipping people off. So it's embarrassing, whether we think we can see it or not. So quiz question 4, true or false? Studies have shown that music has no effect on our driving habits. Remember, you're in a company vehicle. Our trucks have our name and number plastered all over them. People call all the time. And we take those calls very seriously. When someone cares enough to call us and let us know that one of our drivers is not driving how they think they ought to, we want to make sure we take that seriously and try to learn from that. Maybe there's something we're doing wrong, or there's something deeper going on that we need to look into. Always be courteous and professional. You represent the company. And that's just not the way we drive, but the way we dress, the way we talk and interact with customers are a direct reflection of what we represent. And if a customer sees us driving bad or dressing dirty or unprofessional, they're going to think ill of the company. And we don't want that, because that's not who we are, and that's not who you are. So I promised fatigue driving. Fatigue driving we did many studies on in college, and what I want us to really focus on here is a study that shows that fatigue driving is likened to driving under the influence of alcohol. It affects our decision-making process and affects our processing. Being awake for 18 hours is equivalent to a BAC, or blood alcohol content, of 0.05, and after 24 hours is equal to a 0.10, which is above the legal limit. That's driving drunk after being awake for 24 hours. And I know all of us are always tired, all of us are always go, 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 but this is something I want us to really think about, that if we're driving around fatigued, it's just as bad as driving around drunk. So question 5, true or false, fatigue driving is equated to drunk driving. I'm going to leave that up here for a little bit. Distracted driving. We knew this was coming. We are go, go, go all the time. Our life is made up of distractions. And like I said earlier in the presentation, driving has become so easy that it's usually the last thing on our mind. We're eating lunch or breakfast while getting to work or going to a job site. We are listening to music, talking to passengers, which could be co-workers. There are people, we're trying to figure out what they're doing, other drivers. Mental distractions, family issues. If something's going on at home, you're thinking about that and your head's not in the game, and that's a mental distraction. And as we're thinking about, I should have said this, or I wish I would have done that differently, we're not focused on driving. And of course, cell phones. We're all guilty of it. Cell phones are an integral part of our business. Texting, emailing, calls, talking to salespeople, picking up directions for a job site or a residential call. These are very deadly distractions, and we do them a lot. We've all heard the statistic where an average text take your eyes off the road long enough to cover a football field. That's a lot of time to get to an accident. In Illinois, it's actually illegal to text and drive. But for commercial vehicles, it's super illegal. And they hold both the driver and the company responsible. And I know when I made this presentation, these numbers were current, but I can only imagine they've gone up. At the time, they would fine the driver about $3,000 and suspend their license, and they would fine the company anywhere from $11,000 to $12,000. And I'm sure that that's only gone up. Our policy here is a zero tolerance policy. We do not want you on your phones while driving. There's many methods to avoid that, whether that's Bluetooth, whether that's a headset, or a speaker you can speak into. But again, we don't want to see you on your phones because we know the deadly consequences of that. Lastly, your family's counting on you. We want you to go home at the end of the day. And with 1,000 fatalities in Illinois just last year, we don't want to be part of that statistic. So thank you. That concludes our online training for all employees except those in the runner warehouse department or any of those employees that could drive or occasionally drive the larger trucks or C-class vehicles. If that's the case, please watch the remaining section of the video and follow the instructions at the end. For my records, if you are not one of those employees, just email me the time and date of completion, and your code word is grapes. And then in that email, please have the 5 true or false questions answered as well. Make sure you're sending the email to the appropriate address. So again, thank you guys. This concludes your online defensive driving training. As always, please do not hesitate to call or email with any questions or concerns. So again, thank you. I'll give everyone a chance to kind of leave or exit out, but if you're a runner and warehouse driver, please stay tuned. It's just a few more slides that go over the specific hazards of those Class C trucks and those larger trucks, because they have different hazards associated with them. So we're going to keep going. Driving experience. This is not an innate skill. We can't just go from driving our small Honda Civic, jump in a big box truck, and act like it's the same, because they're really not. It takes different skills, and it takes practice. It requires more attention, because there's more things that we need to pay attention to, and more hazards associated with it. The bigger the truck, the bigger the mistakes, and the more the bad decisions are amplified. So your Class C license. Your Class C license is required to drive any single vehicle over 16,001 pounds and less than 26,001 pounds. So that's the range you are allowed to drive. Your Class D, so your standard driving license, allows you to drive anything up to 16,000 pounds. When you have your C Class, you have to also have a DOT physical, which is something that we send our drivers to go get, and that's I think that expires every 5 years. Includes any truck with a G plate or above. You may have noticed that some trucks and vehicles have little numbers at the end or letters. So a G plate or H plate require a Class C, whereas an F plate or below does not. C-Class also covers truck and trailer combinations, but they cannot exceed 26,001 pounds combined vehicle weight, and that's determined by capacity, not actual weight. So if you have a 14,000 pound capacity trailer, whether it's empty or not, for all intents and purposes, that trailer now weighs 14,000 pounds. So driving with a 13,000 pound truck and a 14,000 pound trailer, that equals 27,000 pounds, and therefore you cannot drive it with just your C-Class license. Which leads to quiz question 6, true or false. A Class C license allows you to operate a truck and trailer combination of 13,000 pounds and 14,000 pounds respectively, which means your truck is 13 and your trailer is 14,000 pounds capacity. So some associated hazards with these Class C and larger truck and trailers, they're longer, which means they're harder to turn. You have to take wider turns. They're bigger and heavier, so they have increased braking distance. They stop slower, they start slower. They have much larger blind spots, I can see in the pictures. And not to mention all the stuff we've already talked about you have to apply. That's why we kind of talk about this a little bit more, just because there are more hazards associated with them. And remember, you hold the keys to being a safe and defensive driver. I know that's kind of corny and lame, but it's true. You are the last line of defense. You can have all the training in the world, but if you make a poor decision, it's going to have an effect. So thanks to those of you still remaining. This concludes your online training for the runner warehouse department. Email me the time and date of completion, and your code word is apples. This will let me know you watch the runner portion of it. And then your answers to the quiz. And depending on who you work for, make sure you send it to the appropriate address. So again, thank you for watching, and thank you for your time today.